Our world is rapidly changing. The pace of technological advancement is rapidly increasing, and yet we still see people suffering from hunger, poverty, and climate change. What if our schools become more engaged in our cities, our communities, and our society? What if we can utilize our skills and leverage technology to solve our world's problems? This is our vision for Nexus Innovation Labs. We are building a hub and a culture of innovation, collaboration, and entrepreneurship for our community and beyond. And at its core is social impact. By creating a comfortable environment for teamwork and learning, we are empowering our students to use their skills to be the change we want to see. Our programs are anchored on the La Salle Paz mission vision, 4 strategic directions, and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Our Creativity and Innovation program provides students with creative spaces where they can collaborate and learn with the best tools available. By allowing our students to become creative and critical thinkers, we will help them become globally competent and become the best they can be. Our Global Citizenship program aims to help our students learn from others and learn by doing. We are inviting leaders and like-minded organizations to engage with our students, develop innovative learning programs, and provide mentoring so we can enable our students to become socially responsible and future-ready citizens. Our Collective Impact program enables us to look for changemakers who shares the same goal of driving sustainable and inclusive social impact through innovation and entrepreneurship. Collaboration is the key for social transformation, and this program will enable us to develop a force for positive change. Our Nexus Ventures program aims to empower innovators to develop ideas that will generate social impact. Nexus will provide them with the resources they need so we can address real-world problems with real-world solutions. Nexus Innovation Labs will empower our stakeholders to become effective changemakers for our community and our society. Through our collective effort, we aim to build an impact-driven community that would enable us to build a society founded on equity and justice and on inclusive and sustainable development. This is our vision, and we invite you to join us.
Let us remember that we are in the most holy presence of God. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Father in heaven, God of love, all I have and am is yours. Grant that I may become a living sign of your compassion in this world. Grant me the faith to live my life always in the awareness of your loving presence. Grant me zeal to serve without thought of reward those to whom you send me. Grant me charity to bear the burdens of my brothers and sisters. Teach me to seek your Son's face in the last, the lost, and the least. In whatever I undertake, may I seek above all things to procure your glory as far as I able and as you will require of me. Strengthen me by your Holy Spirit to follow Jesus by living the commitment I make this day. Amen. Saint John Baptist de la Salle, pray for us. Live Jesus in our hearts forever. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Hello and good afternoon, Lasalians. I hope you're having a good day so far. This is Jay Haboneta from Nexus Innovation Labs, your host this afternoon. Welcome and thank you for joining the third installment of our Future Ready webinar series as part of our continuing efforts to prepare and equip our Lasallian partners and, of course, our students in the challenges and requirements of the 21st century. Our first series was about mindfulness. We really need that right now, especially since it's very hard to meet in person or face to face. Our second installment was about adaptive resilience. Of course, we're having our border-free education program. It's a fully online education model. And of course, it presents challenges as well as opportunities. So I think from the last two sessions, we were able to learn how to do self-care and how to be mindful about our thoughts, how we can position it to become positive thoughts. And of course, during the last session and with Mark Relova, we were able to learn, I personally learned how to operationalize having a growth mindset and how we can apply it in our daily lives. And this afternoon, I hope you are sitting in your favorite seat at the comfort of your home. Of course, thank you to our very frequent viewers. I've seen Sir Alan Pagsuyuin, Dean Conrada Bacong, of course, Miss Christine from IS, Di Makulangan, Miss Mian Santos from the Office of Sustainability and Inclusive Education. Thank you very much for everybody for joining us this afternoon. So let me now proceed to introducing our guest speaker, so that we will have more time for the question and answer. We're very fortunate to have our speaker this afternoon to talk about complex communication. Of course, this is one of the 5 future skill sets that was outlined in the book Deep Human. So there are 5 skills required for the 21st century: mindfulness, adaptive resilience, complex communication, and next year we will talk about empathy and self-awareness. But this afternoon, our speaker joined the International Seed Federation in April 2019. So currently, she is the communications manager for the International Seed Federation based in Switzerland. Her 15 years as a communications professional spans both public and private sectors. Her role at the International Seed Federation is to support the organization's key strategic objectives and to help the seed sector tell its story to the most relevant stakeholders, which includes policymakers, partners in the agricultural value chain, as well as its own members composed of national seed associations and seed companies. Previously, she was Group Communications Manager of East West Seed, a vegetable seed company based in Asia, whose main clients are smallholder farmers in the tropics. Prior to that, she also served as the Media and Communications Director for a member of the Philippine Senate, where she gained firsthand knowledge in the most effective means of shaping policy and reforms, legislation, institution building, and partnerships. Francine Sayoc has a background in journalism and a master's degree in international studies obtained through a scholarship from the government of Spain. So as you see, we have a very powerful speaker today in complex communication. But of course, we are very proud because she is an alumnus of De La Salipa. So she went to grade school and high school in De La Salipa. I won't ask now what years. And of course, before I formally introduce her, let us extend our gratitude for her joining us this afternoon. She just arrived back in the Philippines, I believe, for a visit last Friday, and she's joining us this afternoon, actually live from the campus, together with her sister Mitch Sayoc. So again, without further ado, let us welcome Miss Francine Sayoc. Good afternoon, Miss Francine.
Hi, Jay. Good afternoon.
Welcome to De La Salipa and Nexus
Thank
University.
you.
Uh,
I'm in your office.
yes, thank you for visiting. Turning over the mic to you.
Thank you. Well, again, thank you, Jay, and thank you to the DLSL Nexus for inviting me. Magandang hapon po sa lahat. I'm really thrilled to be here today and finally do this webinar with you all, with the students and partners of the LaSallian community, of which I am a proud alumna. I spent my grade school and high school days here many years ago. I won't tell you anymore kung anong year so as not to reveal my age. But as you know, if you guys remember, originally this webinar was slated about 4 weeks ago. And I watched from my home in Switzerland as the country experienced back-to-back typhoons, and I know it hasn't been easy for many of us. So I want to especially thank you all for coming today and for spending the next hour with me to talk about complex communications. I think it's a very cool idea to have this type of webinar series available to students and partners. So again, I want to give credit to DLSL Nexus for having this webinar series. I think it's quite innovative to frame learning beyond traditional academics, to also include the development of skills that are really needed to make sense of a very complex world. In Jay's very kind introduction of me, he mentioned the term communications professional somewhere. And even for me, I find the term a bit strange. Because everyone is a communicator. It's not just the professionals who communicate. In whatever role or function you have, you are communicating with someone. Therefore, the skills and the principles used by so-called communications professionals are useful to all and should be mastered by everyone. So in this session, I'm not going to try to be philosophical or theoretical about these. Rather, I want to be practical and offer you useful tips that you can readily utilize in your daily life. These are also some of the lessons that I've picked up in both my professional and personal life. In the last 12 years, I've been moving around the world. I've lived in the Philippines, in Spain, in Thailand, and currently now I'm based in Switzerland. And I hope I can share with you some of the perspectives that I've gained as a practitioner of communications in an international setting, and having had the opportunity to live, study, and work in several places in the world. So let's start. If we could go to my next slide. There. So for the next hour, we will learn how to communicate with clarity, to manage difficult conversations, and to give skillful feedback. The outcome, hopefully, would be to gain the ability to focus on what's really important whenever we communicate with other people, to manage and resolve conflicts, and to have meaningful and engaging interactions with other people. And whenever you see this, there's a clipboard sign there on the slide. Whenever you see this sign, this clipboard checklist thing, it will be when I will be providing useful and practical tips that you can apply in your daily communications. But before we get into that, next slide, please. I want to hear from you guys, from all of you who are here watching this webinar. What words come to mind when you hear that someone is a good communicator? I have a poll on Slido that you can log into by using this keyword, this hash key complex com. And let's give it maybe 2 minutes and let's form a word cloud of what words you associate when you hear that someone is a good communicator. Let's see what you guys think. Okay, we're seeing some answers now. Clarity when talking. Very good. Concise, yes. Come on, guys. I know you can do it. There we go. Ayun, madami na. Confidence, okay. Assertiveness, effective at getting people on board, okay, so getting people to engage. Calm and collected. Conversationalist. These are all very good answers. It seems that confidence is the most popular answer. Able to express his or herself clearly. Okay, very good, because that's going to be part of our session. Extrovert, it's interesting. Proactive. Yeah, so keep the answers coming. We're gonna get back to this in a while, but it's very interesting for me to hear what you guys think about good communication and what characterizes a good communicator. And these are all very good answers. So if we could move to the next slide, I want to dive right into the topic. In today's world, the ability to communicate is perhaps one of the most essential and useful skills that you could ever have. And that's not an exaggeration, because we live in an increasingly complex world that demands more sophisticated communication skills than ever before. And that is why I think the title of this series, Future Ready, is very apt, because communication is one of the key assets you need to have in order to be ready for the future, whether in your professional life or even in your personal life. So in this slide, I'm showing you a picture of someone who is surrounded by so many things. We live in an age of information where we are connected 24/7. And we are constantly bombarded by information from all directions, and attention spans are getting shorter and shorter every day. But the thing with the age of information is that it's also the age of disinformation. And what we're learning now is that things are never black and white, and there's always nuances, there's always context behind what we watch, what we read, or what we listen to. So we need to consider multiple perspectives. In addition to that, we are currently experiencing something unprecedented in our lifetime. We are in the middle of a global pandemic, which makes our daily lives even more complex, and where access to information could literally spell the difference between life and death. So this is a challenge for communicators as much as it is a challenge for everyone else in the community. Next slide, please. So this is the first part of the session, communicating with clarity. Now you may wonder, why should we care about clarity? Why is this essential for communication? And if I remember from your answers in Slido, there was someone who said that a good communicator is someone who is able to express himself clearly. So why should we care about clarity? And to answer this question, I think it's helpful to imagine what happens when clarity is absent. So let's consider the cost of the lack of clarity. Next slide, please. So when there is a lack of clarity in communication, there is also a lack of understanding. So if you're unclear, your audience is unlikely to understand you. And if they don't understand you, this could lead to disagreement or making the wrong decisions or wasting time or missing opportunities. And it leads to a lot of frustration and goals not being accomplished, even strained relationships. And at worst, it could lead to a full-blown crisis. There is some good news though. If we pay attention to some key elements and avoid a few bad habits and routines, we can dramatically increase the clarity of our communication every time we talk to someone else. So clarity is an important asset. Next. In this slide, I'm showing you all the different things that kill clarity. The famous architect Frank Lloyd Wright said that the lack of clarity is the #1 time waster, and I agree with him completely. Again, giving you context, during this time of the pandemic, we've had to grapple with words like epidemiology or false positive or asymptomatic. And these are words that were usually confined only to the scientific or the medical community, but today we're using it in our everyday language. So one of the things that we should be careful about when we communicate are complicated words or jargon. This is something that gets in the way of clarity. The second one would be overloaded sentences and documents. And as kids call it these days, it's TLDR, or too long, didn't read. So if you overload your communication with sentences and documents, there's a likelihood that you will not be understood. The next one is messy document structures and formats. So this is a bit more based on design and structure. So if your document is messy or if your slide presentation is messy, the brain kind of switches off and you lose the interest of your audience. The next one is poor communication infrastructure. So again, this is physical, technical in nature. It could be in the form of a poor internet connection or bad mobile signal. So that also gets in the way of clarity. If you have this, especially now in the age of online learning, that's really, really important. The next clarity killer is a lack of effort or laziness. Communicating requires effort, and it requires a desire to be understood and also to understand. So yeah, it takes effort from both sides. The next one is ever-changing truths. And again, this is very important in the age of disinformation and fake news. So we always have to fact check things. And the last one would be extra elements that divert attention from the main message. And when you put these all together, when you see the initials of all of this, they spell out complex. So how do you go from complex to clear? And that's what I will show you in the next slide. There. So this is a checklist, a clear checklist, and clear stands for contextualized, logically structured, essential, ambiguity-free, and resonating. So to be able to clearly communicate, you must provide the context of the message right at the beginning. And how to check this? would be to ask yourself, does my audience have enough background information to understand this? So it's not coming out of nowhere. You place it in context. The next one is logically structured. What it means is structuring the message in a logical and accessible manner. And how to check that would be to see if the elements build on each other. Does the message flow smoothly? Essential means focusing on what's important. So keeping it concise. Again, what was said in the Slido comment, being concise, and you have to be meticulous in editing. How to check this? Ask yourself, did I give emphasis on the most relevant part? Or what can be left out? What can I take out? What distracts from the main message? And can I make this more simple? The next one for letter A is ambiguity free. You can do this by removing vague terms, removing terms that are not really helping you get to your message. So use precise language as much as possible. How to check? Ask yourself again, could something be misinterpreted? Can I use more specific words? And did I review it enough? Or even peer review it, ask someone else to have a second look. That always helps. And the last letter in this checklist, the letter R, is resonating. And this is about using a style that stimulates audiences to engage. So it has to be engaging and interesting enough. And if it's a document, it should be balanced between text and visuals. Again, keeping in mind that people's attention spans are a precious commodity these days and getting shorter and shorter by the day. Next slide. All right, so in this part of the webinar, we're going to talk about managing difficult conversations. So in the first part, we learned how to be clear, but what happens when the road to clarity breaks down? What happens when common understanding and agreement is not achieved? Then you have to be prepared to manage and to conduct a difficult conversation. Next. Many of us have had to go through difficult conversations, whether with a colleague at work or even with friends and family members. It happens. It's just part of life. Managing difficult conversations is part of everyday life and requires us to learn some communication techniques to handle them well. My personal take on difficult conversation is not to avoid it. If there's something that needs to be hashed out, it has to be hashed out in a respectful, always in a constructive manner. And I know there's a cultural aspect to this, maybe. Most of us Filipinos value pakikisama, and we avoid conflict as much as possible. But sometimes it's worth questioning that. And if you truly care about something, it's worth having a conversation over. One of the key things to remember if you want to have a successful conversation is to not make it about you. So start with the other person. Make an effort to focus on the other party. Consider the essential question, who am I speaking to? Who am I speaking with? And it's the age-old advice of putting yourself in the other person's shoes. Again, this is not coming from me. There's nothing original about it. It's an age-old advice. And it sounds so basic, but we forget it. It's so easy to forget this. Next slide. Before an important conversation, you, again, should ask yourself a few things to prepare yourself mentally for an important conversation. And an important conversation could be, I don't know, a talk with your boss, a talk with your colleague, or a talk with your friend or family member. The first thing to consider is, where does the person sit in the relationship versus task spectrum? So what does that mean? People who lean towards so if you see on this slide, on that graphic above, it's like a slide scale. People who lean towards the relationship end of the spectrum, so the left side of the spectrum, they're generally more focused on the social and emotional aspect of a conversation. Usually, these are people who are talkative and informal in their language and behavior, and they're comfortable expressing their feelings. And when you're trying to communicate with a relationship-focused person, you need to get them comfortable and provide them enough reassurance that they're being heard and acknowledged. You can frame questions like, how would you feel if, or wouldn't it be exciting if, something like that. On the other hand, on the right side of the spectrum of the scale are people who are on the task spectrum. And these are people who are motivated by achieving results. They like structure, they like clarity. And you can communicate best with them by being straight to the point, and having a clear plan of action, having sound logic, sound reasoning, and data information to support your plan or your argument. And people on the task spectrum, as the term suggests, they like to celebrate achievement. Therefore, in your conversations, you may want to highlight what you can stand to achieve or gain together. Now, on the second graphic, you would see these emojis. And this is about considering what sort of energetic or emotional state this person is in. So before you talk to someone, before you have an important conversation with someone, it's important to check on their energetic and emotional state. And it's quite simple and common sense. It's about finding the right timing. If this person is tired or in an emotional state, there is less likelihood to have a productive dialogue with this person. And that goes for both sides as well. You yourself shouldn't initiate an important conversation if you yourself are tired or particularly emotional. So make sure you are calm, well rested, and well fed. So magpuyat or gutom when you're having an important conversation with someone. And the last one, the last thing to consider would be, what does this person value and need? And again, what I said earlier, you have to focus on the other person. What is driving this person? What is driving the conversation? And often conflict arises not because the needs of one person are in conflict with the others, but it's mostly because our manner of fulfilling those needs are different. There is something called a SCARF model by the Neuro Leadership Institute, which categorizes differences in people's social motivation. So SCARF stands for status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. We won't have time to go through each of these, but you can read more about you can find out your own SCARF profile by taking a test. And I will provide you the link at the end of the presentation. So you'll get a clearer picture of what drives you and what you value. And I think it's quite useful to know that. Next slide, please. So what happens when we find ourselves in a conflict situation? There are biological and physical things that are happening. So when we are in a conflict situation, our body goes into a fight or flight mode. So it's an automatic response that happens in our brain. And in such a heightened state, we become tense, or we become hypervigilant, we become contracted and defensive. And what happens in the amygdala part of your brain, which is in charge of detecting threat or fear, it gets hijacked, it gets overstimulated, and the rational part of your brain, the one that's in charge of problem solving or logic or focus, that part of the brain shuts off when you release stress hormones. And the advice given by psychologists is quite simple. It's taking a deep breath to calm down and to regain control of your rational mind. So some ways to diffuse conflict would be to ask yourself or to check yourself when you're communicating. Did you feel heard? Did the other person feel heard? Did you feel seen? And did you feel like what you said mattered to the other person? So I think that's quite useful to know. Next. And now we come to the third and last part of our session today. We might be going a bit fast, but that's okay. We'll have more time for Q&A. The last part is about giving skillful feedback. And in your professional, even your personal life, you will find yourself giving or receiving feedback. So this is something that happens very often. And therefore, it is an essential communication skill to know how to give skillful feedback. And it's not always easy. It's not as easy as you think, because giving feedback or receiving feedback requires you to be vulnerable. And what I learned is this thing about feedback is especially important to millennials in the workplace. So now we have a new generation of professionals coming into the workplace who are of the millennial age group. And this generation grew up constantly receiving feedback, whether as affirmation in the form of likes or comments on social media. So they always have a vast amount of information available to them to evaluate if what they're doing is good or bad. So they're constantly looking for feedback. They're always interested to know if they're doing well or not. And as more and more young people become professionals, we in the older generation, or even in the younger generation, must learn the ability to give feedback. That's going to be very useful to you. You will see. Next slide. So in giving skillful feedback, remember that feedback can be positive or negative, but in both cases, your intention should always be to help the person. So that's where you start. The purpose of feedback are threefold. You want to recognize and reinforce positive behavior. So you want to signal to someone if they're doing a good job and that they should keep doing what they're doing. The second purpose of feedback would be correcting unhelpful behavior. So feedback is useful to tell someone why something is not working and how they can improve. And the third purpose of feedback would be to increase awareness and provide direction for the future. Providing feedback gives you the opportunity to do course corrections and to bring the group back on track towards a common goal. Next slide. So here I want to show you what we call an SBI-FI model. And what you see in the picture are two women. They look like colleagues. They look like they work together. And they are going to give feedback to each other. Well, one is going to give feedback to the other. The SBI-FI model stands for Situation, Behavior, Impact, Future, and In-Group. So the first one, situation, this is quite easy. It's just fact-based. What you do, you open the feedback session by describing the specific and recent situation where it happened. So an example of this could be during yesterday's meeting, or while we were in class on Monday, something like that. So you need to be specific about the situation that you're describing, and you should avoid using generalizations like, I notice you always do this, or every time you do this, because that is not helpful. The B in the SBI-FI model is behavior. So here now you communicate the behavior that you observed in a clear and non-judgmental way. So an example of this would be, I noticed that you did this or did that, or I found that your data was inaccurate, something like this. So stick to observations and be as objective as possible. And then the I is impact. it stands for impact. Here you explain the consequence of the behavior that you observed. So you begin your statements with I to take ownership of your views and to reduce and to minimize judgment as much as possible. So an example of this would be, I felt like this, or I felt distracted by your interruption. I felt frustrated by this. It seemed to me that, so that's how you give, you show the impact of the person's behavior. And then here it's important to take a pause. Taking a pause after you share an observation allows the other person to reflect and absorb the information and to acknowledge it. When you're giving feedback, it's tempting to keep talking, but it's important to pause for reflection and to get some oxygen back into the conversation. And that will help the conversation become even more thoughtful and productive. And the F here is for future. So constructive feedback is always forward-looking and solution-based. You should reference what can be done in the future to improve. So an example of this statement would be, what do you think you can do differently? Or give them specific action items like, moving forward, I would need you to do this or do that. Or I think it would be a good idea if we can do this or that. And then the last part of the feedback model is in-group. And here is where you close the feedback by emphasizing a shared vision and your shared values. So here you reinforce the sense of community and the sense that you're both in this together. So it ends on a positive note. And it's essential if you want your feedback to stick, because you want the person to feel okay about receiving feedback. So an example of an in-group statement would be, I am sharing this feedback to you because I value our friendship, or I'm sharing this feedback to you because I care about your success at work, something like that. And on the next slide, we put it all together and we tried to create a conversation here, a feedback conversation. So the lady on the left is giving the SBI-FI feedback. So she's saying, during the meeting yesterday, I noticed that the social media data you presented to the team was inaccurate. So here she is clearly showing you the situation, and the situation is during the meeting yesterday. So it's very specific. And then she tells you the behavior that she observed. I noticed that the social media data you presented to the team was inaccurate. And then on the second sentence, she says the impact of this behavior that she observed. I feel, so she starts it with I feel that it didn't reflect the progress we've made on this important project. And then after she says that, she takes a pause and allows the other person to respond. And so the other person says, oh, I was in such a hurry to prepare the report, I must have used all data. So clearly she acknowledges that the mistake has been made. So then the first person replies again and completes the feedback model and goes to talking about what they can do in the future. So here she says, here's what we can do. As a follow-up, you can prepare a written report with the correct data this time and send it to the team. So that's very clear line of action. It's very directive in what she suggests. And then lastly, she will say, I know you worked hard on the campaign and I like for those efforts to be acknowledged. So here she is talking about caring. She is expressing concern for the other person and recognizing what that person has done. So, you know, it's an intention that is very constructive and very helpful. So that's the SBI-FI model. Next slide. So to wrap it all up, again, remember that feedback can be positive or negative, but in both cases, your intention should be for the benefit of the other person. A balance of positive and negative feedback is important. Positive feedback is useful in encouraging and boosting the other person's confidence, but too much of it or only giving positive feedback might lead to complacency or a lack of growth. On the other hand, negative feedback can be useful to give someone the signal to do better and to try harder. But only giving negative feedback is also not good because it could lead to discouragement and might lead the other person to just completely give up. So a balance of positive and negative is always good. So in giving feedback and starting a feedback conversation, you keep these steps in mind. Follow the SBIFI model. Focus on facts and offer strength-based feedback. So identify a strength in the other person and acknowledge that and give that person enough to go with. Learn how to pause, be clear about what you need, and engage in a solution-focused dialogue. So this is what they mean when they say constructive feedback. So it should be something that the person can use to improve. So yeah, never underestimate the power of positive feedback. For you, it may just be a simple feedback, but when you do it the right way, when you do it constructively, it could really mean something to a person. It could have such great impact. It can motivate, it can encourage, and it can create cohesion within the team. So that's what I want to share with you. On the next slide, I think we're down to the end of this session, basically. I've listed the references that I've used for this session, and on the last part, there's a link there for you to take a SCARF assessment if you want to know what your SCARF profile is. And that's it. We're opening for Q&A, I suppose. If you have any questions, you can type it in Slido, and you can use this code to get in Slido.
Thank you
I'm
so
reading
much.
the comments. I'm reading the comments on YouTube, and I want to say hi to a few people that I know. My classmate Christine.
Yeah, go ahead. Thank you so much, Francine. I think, yeah, for a very practical presentation on complex communication, I believe I've learned how to communicate with clarity, manage difficult conversations, and of course, to give skillful feedback. I have a question, and as the others, you can just scan the QR code, and then you can type in your questions, or you can even type it on YouTube, and we will read it to Francine. I have a question here in terms of managing difficult conversations. If, for example, you see someone, especially where I guess we're talking in terms of a work situation, if, for example, your colleague or the person that you want to speak to is clearly agitated or angry, does it still make sense for you to engage, to communicate, or does it make more sense to find another time when that person or colleague has probably calmed down? But of course, that the challenge there is, what if you won't see this person, again, that you don't really deal with them all the time? So I guess that's my question. How would you deal with an angry person? Thank you.
I think you said it yourself in already in your question that it would be better to. I mean, personally, I think it would be better to wait for the person to be ready for a conversation. It should be that both of you are ready for a conversation, and it's even useful to ask the person, like, I want to talk to you about this or that. Do you have the mental space for it right now? Or are you in the right emotional place to be discussing this? And immediately once you ask that, it gives the signal to the other person that you care and that you want this difficult conversation to be a successful one. So I think that's already a good start. And if it's something that's urgent, I don't know, but I think the more important thing here is not to strike immediately, but to wait for the right timing and to check, like I said, to go through those three things. Is this person in the right emotional and energetic state? Is this person more relationship based, or is this person more task based? And what does this person value? Is this person someone who cares about his status? Is this a person who likes to have certainty and clarity about things? Is this a person who cares about fairness? So already there you can gauge how to start the difficult conversation. I'm
Okay.
seeing
Thank
some
you, Francine.
questions.
Yeah, I think we can now go to the
Yes,
questions.
Jay.
Yes, go ahead. I think we does clarity care for your mental health? From Sir Jose. I guess
Mm-hmm.
what he means here is when you communicate clearly. I guess does it help your mental health? I
Mm-hmm.
guess that's
Mm-hmm.
the question.
If I understand the question well enough, mental health is such a talked about topic these days, especially now that we're all going through an experience that none of us have experienced before. There's a lot of uncertainty, and clarity helps put the mind at ease. If something is clear, your brain kind of relaxes. So I would say that clarity definitely benefits your mental health. So we should try to be as clear as possible to the other person. Yeah.
Okay. I think the next two questions are related. So, what to do if the person you're speaking to is close minded? And then the next
Mm-hmm.
question is how to communicate to a person that you're not comfortable with. So I guess these two questions are go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they do go hand in hand. And if I would answer the first question, speaking to someone who is close-minded, um, your valuation of that person as close-minded is your opinion. So you're already starting with an opinion or a judgment of the other person. What I think would be more helpful is to ask yourself another question. What is preventing this person from talking to me or from listening to me? Is it a difference in opinion? Is it a difference in value? Is it just bad timing? Like maybe this person is going through something else. That's why he has no mental space to deal with a difficult conversation at the moment. So I would answer that question with another question, like, why do you think that person is close-minded? And what other information can you get about that person before you have a difficult conversation with that, with
How
them?
about the person you're not comfortable to talk with?
The person you're not comfortable to talk with, siguro this is a boss, no? Nakakatakot kasi. Yeah, I know it's always intimidating to talk to a boss or someone who you think is who's superior to you or is in a different hierarchy than you. I don't know. I would say just, or it could also be a person who reports to you and that you're not comfortable speaking with. I would say it would be helpful to take yourselves out of your current setting and find a new setting. Like maybe invite this person to coffee or invite this person to go for a walk with you. Try to take the tension as much as possible away from the physical, from the environment where you are, and try to do something that would put both of you at ease and more comfortable with each other. Like maybe this person has common interests as you, like maybe this person likes to do shopping or do yoga. Try to do that together first before you launch into a difficult
So
conversation.
finding a similar interest or hobby and start from
Yes,
there.
yes.
Okay. I think now we can go to the next question. What are your top 3 tips to be a good communicator? I
Mm-hmm.
guess offhand, what are your tips?
I would say, well, I would follow what I said in the session. It's first to be as clear as possible. So strive for clarity. That's what I would say would be the first tip. The second one would be to think about your audience. Think about the person receiving the communication, because it may be clear to you, but may not be clear to the other person because that person is coming from a completely different place. And the other one, I think something practical is just to be honest in your communication, to communicate with sincerity, and not to do this when you communicate. You know, just be straight to the point, but be respectful when you communicate.
They said being honest allows you, to forget about what you said because you always remember it because if you lie, then yeah, you
True.
you will have to remember the time that you lied. I guess we have maybe a time for one or two more questions.
Mm-hmm.
Someone asked how to approach a person to communicate about an important matter.
Mm-hmm. So again, I would go back to what I said on the second part of the session, where you check where this person lies in the relationship versus task spectrum, how that person feels at the moment, and what this person values above all else.
Okay. I have a question. I haven't really done some research here, but I think I've read before in an article from the Harvard Business Review wherein it's said that it's good to know if especially if your boss or your colleague is a reader or a listener. Like there are
Mm-hmm.
I personally, for me, I find it that before if someone wants to present something to me, I'd really like it to be emailed, or I want to read
Mm-hmm.
first the content, and then when we meet, I would be sort of more prepared, or it
Mm.
would be more meaningful to me as opposed to like approaching me in person. Do you think that there is really some truth to that? That some
Mm-hmm.
people are not really good listeners, but they are good readers.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really helpful, and it's also maybe related to the different types of learners, because there are learners that are more visual. There are learners who pick things up better if they listen to it. There are people who are better at writing down things. So I think that's also that relates to how that other person or how effectively you communicate to that other person. So yeah, find the right style.
Okay. Thank you very much, Francine. And I think we're almost out of time. Would you want me to read some of the comments of your teachers,
Sure.
predecessor teachers before Mark Nova, our previous speaker, is here?
Oh,
So
he's here.
there's a message from Miss Christine, who's now the assistant principal for the integrated school. Miss Christine de Macolangan, I believe you were classmates. She said very helpful presentation, and of course proud of you.
Thank you.
Maya Lisa Mantuano. Hello, Francine. Your teachers here when you were in GS are very proud
Yes,
of
I
you.
remember.
Congratulations. And of course, Miss Edita Africa. She said that, bravo, Francine. You are a great speaker. Do you still remember me? We are
Of
happy
course.
for
Naku,
you and
mga
proud
ano
of
to,
you.
mga math teacher to. Di ako masyadong magaling sa math. That's why I went into communications.
Okay. Any last words, Francine, that you want to share before we end?
Well, again, I just wanted to thank DLSL Nexus. It feels good to be here in campus and to see the school again and how it has thrived and how it has developed over the years. And again, if any of you want to get in touch with me, or if you have any more questions, I'm providing here my contact details on LinkedIn. And there's also a website where you can find my profile. Thank you so much, Jay. I really enjoyed this, and I hope everyone else enjoyed it too.
Yes, I'm sure they did, based on the comments on YouTube. Again, Francine, thank you so much for joining us. I hope we can have you again next time. Everyone, can we give Francine a virtual round of applause? Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, our viewers. Catch us again. Our Future Ready webinar series will be back in January 2021 with 2 more additions on self-awareness and empathy. So watch out for that. We really appreciate your presence today. And we hope that this series has been meaningful for everyone. Until next time, this has been Jay Haboneta, your host, now signing off. Thank you.